Hello students, I welcome you all to my YouTube channel, the Akifa's Commerce Classes. So in today's session, we'll solve one problem on trial balance. So in my previous videos on trial balance, we discussed the theoretical part, and as I promised you all that in the next session, we'll start with the problems. So here we are, we'll start with the problems. Now students, there are two things that you should know so that you can solve trial balance very easily or very quickly. So two things that you need to know. So the first one is the modern rules of debit and credit. You all should know this, or let's go through what are the modern rules of debit and credit. As you can see, we have drawings, expenses, asset, liability, equity and revenue. Alright. So now you should know that the drawings, it always has a debit balance. Expenses has a debit balance and asset have a debit balance. So whenever drawings, expenses or asset, as they have debit balance, whenever they increase, they will be debited. And whenever they decrease, they will be credited. Okay. And for liabilities, equity and revenue, we have to remember that they have credit balances. Alright. So whenever they increase, they will be credited, but whenever they are decreased, they will be debited. So for this modern rules of debit and credit, now you have to remember one simple word, that is dealer. How did I get dealer? Take the initials of all this, D-E-A-L-E-R, dealer. Okay. First three have debit balance and the rest of the three have credit balance. So whichever account has debit balance, whenever they are increased, they will be debited, and the opposite of that when they are decreased. Similarly with L-E-R, they have credit balances. So when they are increased, they will have credit balance only. But then when they are decreased, they will have debit balance. Alright. So students, one more important thing that you need to know is this trick. You have to remember the word clear. So with this trick, you all will be able to solve any problem on trial balance with a lot of ease. Okay. So let's start with clear. You mean capital, liability, expense, asset and revenue. Okay. You should know what C stands for, what L stands for and so on. Now after this, you should know that capital, liability and revenue, that's C, L and R, these three have credit balance. It means you have to record it on the credit side. And expenses and asset, okay, they have to be recorded on the debit side. If you are finding it difficult to just memorize what capital stands for which side, debit or credit, liability, debit or credit, then what you do, just remember expenses and asset, they have to be recorded on the debit side, and remaining all the things have to be recorded on the credit side. We have to remember expenses and asset on the debit side, and capital, liabilities or any revenue that is being earned, it has to be recorded on the credit side. So now two things that you should know is that first of all, you should know the modern rules of debit and credit, and secondly, you should know this clear. Alright. So students, this is our first problem on trial balance. So let's start. From the following ledger balances, prepare the trial balance as on 31st March 2016 of Mr. Uday Singh. Alright, so let's begin with solving the problem. So first step that we need to know is we have to remember the word clear. As I said that expenses and asset, as you can see here, I said only expenses and asset, only these two are recorded on the debit side. Alright. And revenue, capital and liability are recorded on the credit side. So let's start with marking the accounts first. Alright. Now first is goodwill. So what is goodwill? Goodwill is an intangible asset that we know, right? So mark it as debit side. Alright. Next we have salary. So what is salary? Salary is an expense. So we know that expense will be debited. Remember, expenses and asset, only these two things will be debited. Next we have advertisement account. Now advertisement again is an expense to the company, so it will be debited. Next we have electricity charges. Again it's an expense, so we have to debit it. Next we have is carriage. Now students, we should first of all know what is carriage. So carriage, it is actually the cost of transporting goods into a business from a supplier, or it is also the cost of transporting goods from a business to the customer. So in simple words, carriage refers to the cost of transportation of goods. So again it is an expense to the company. So expenses are debited, right? Next we have sales. Okay, sales is neither an expense nor an asset. So it will come on which side? It will come on the credit side. So mark it on credit side. Next we have purchase. So whenever we purchase an item, okay, it will come on the debit side. First of all, because you are paying for it, okay, because it is in a way an expense, and therefore it will be recorded on the debit side. Next we have capital. So capital is a liability to the firm or to the company, therefore it will be recorded on the credit side. Plant and machinery is then again an asset, so debit side. General expenses, trade expenses, these are expenses, so they are on the debit side. Then we have opening stock. Okay, so opening stock is also an asset to us. So opening stock and debtors, debit side and debit side. Creditor is a liability to us, alright, so therefore it will be on the credit side. Then we have land and building. It is an asset to us, so it will be debited. Then we have discount received. So discount received is an income to us, and discount received will therefore be recorded on the credit side. Okay, only asset and expenses will be recorded on the debit side, so this will be recorded on the credit side. Then we have patent. So what is patent? Patent is an intangible asset first of all, and this asset, it grants a business the sole right to manufacture and sell an invention. Okay, so it is an asset, so it will be debit. Rent is an expense, so debit. Furniture is an asset, debit. Print and stationery. Now print and stationery is again an expense to us, therefore it will be debited. Sorry, I read this as discount received earlier. This is dividend received. Even then it will come on the credit side. Next we have discount allowed and discount received. So students, first of all we should know the meaning of what is discount allowed and discount received. So discount allowed is when the seller of the goods or services, he gives discount to the buyer, alright, and discount received is the reverse situation. It means where the buyer of the goods or services is granted a discount by the seller. So discount allowed is an expense to us. Okay, why? Because we are giving it to the buyer. So if it is an expense, it will be debited. Discount received is an income, so it will be credited. Alright. Then last we have cash in hand. Cash in hand is an asset to us, and therefore it will be debited. So in this manner you are supposed to first mark which account will come on the debit side and on the credit side, and you will be in a position to solve it very easily if you just know this word clear. And only remember that expenses and asset, only these two items will come on the debit side, and remaining all the transactions, all the accounts you have to record on the credit side. Alright. So students, as you all can see here, that here I have written the solution. So previously what we did is that for this problem, okay, what I did is that I marked which account will be on the debit side and which one will be on the credit side. So here I have just drew the column particulars rupees, and I have just put the items where they belong to. Like for example, as we know that the expenses and asset, they are on the debit side, so I have wrote all of them on the debit side, and similarly the capital, the liability and the revenue, all these items I have recorded on the credit side. So after you do this, you have to total the debit and the credit side. Like how you can see, I have totaled them up here, and I have got 3,97,150 on both these sides. So this is how you prepare the trial balance. It means that at the end your debit and the credit should match to each other. Only then your sum is right. Okay. So this is how you are supposed to solve trial balance. It is very easy. You just have to know which items on which of the sides.